And I won't use the video at all because it's a podcast, but can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. By the way, I was going to record too, if that's okay. I'll put this on my YouTube channel, if that might be okay.
Say that again.
Can I record as well so that I can put this on my YouTube channel?
I think the host is the only one who can record, but I could send it to you.
Okay, that'd be fine. Yeah, I'll put it up on mine and send it out on my Facebook page and all that. So get more views that way.
Definitely, definitely. So you're an architect and you've designed healthcare structures across the city, is that right?
That's correct. Across the country, across the state, regionally, done over $2 billion worth of healthcare construction, designed hospitals, cancer centers, you name it. A lot of clinics lately, mostly clinics.
Okay. Are you native to Louisville or?
That's correct. I was born here.
Okay. Well, great. What buildings around town have you been responsible for?
Around town, well, being healthcare, primarily a lot of my work has been renovations, like at University Hospital. Hopefully none of the people that are viewing this will ever experience some of my my projects, but I did the emergency department at the University Hospital, the trauma center there. I did all of that. So, if you have a major automobile accident or shooting or anything like that nature, they will go to a trauma room that I designed there at University Hospital. Did a lot of work there.
Okay.
I did the family health clinics East Broadway location, which was a renovation of the former American Standard headquarters building. It's at Logan and Broadway. I just completed a clinic at 15th and Broadway for the Park Duval Community Health organization. It's called the Russell Neighborhood Clinic that is there. I've done work at Norton Healthcare. I did the helipad at Jewish Hospital, did things at Baptist. If you go down to Elizabethtown, I did a lot of work at Hardin Memorial Hospital. I formerly worked at Humana way back in the day when they had hospitals. So I built hospitals throughout the country. So anyways, that gives a little flavor for what I do in my real time.
And how did you get interested in historic preservation?
I've always been involved in history. I've always loved history. When I was in high school, I had a teacher that really at St. X High School that got me involved in history. And so if I could have made a living as a historian or a something of that nature, then I would have gone into that field. But architecture, it seemed, paid a little bit more than what history professors were being paid. So I had a talent for drafting and putting things together. So that's why I went into architecture. But I never lost my passion for history and preservation. And so I've kind of have a dual career, if you will, both history and healthcare. So it's all worked out for the most. Pretty good.
Yeah, great. Could you talk a little bit about what your assessment of the state of historic preservation in the country is right now? Is it healthy? Are we safe if we should be?
Well, it's always back and forth with preservation. Obviously, as one of the council people called me the other day, a crazy preservationist for trying to save the Liberty Hall building, which I'm sure we'll discuss here shortly. But anyways, as an architect, I just know we don't build them like this anymore. And it pains me to see some just beautiful structures just being demolished. And so we work the best we can. And I always come at it from an economic development argument. I don't come at it from an aesthetic or let's keep it because it's old. Let's keep it because it's economically viable. And by that, I mean, to me, it's a lot less costly to renovate than build new. The cost the square foot costs bear me out on that. So you can renovate normally a lot less expensive than building new. And especially these type structures, you can never build these buildings for a cost of new construction nowadays. And they contribute so much to the vitality of the community. Their ornate decoration on the buildings, the aesthetic quality of them. I think it adds a lot to a community to save the structures than tearing them down, which to me is a big negative. So it adds economic vitality to a community to save buildings. And a lot of people don't view it in that manner. They view it as just saving old buildings, but actually they contribute a lot to the heritage of the community and all. And visitors to Louisville love seeing our old buildings. They love coming here and seeing West Main Street, Old Louisville, our historic neighborhoods. And why are we trying to lessen the value of a visitor amenity of that nature? I've not quite understood some of our officials thinking that it's better to tear down than build new. So anyways, that's a little rambling about why preservation is important.
Well, what do you, if you could put yourself in their shoes, what are they thinking, especially in the specific case of Liberty Hall?
Well,
why are they going to tear it down?
Well, before we get, Liberty Hall is kind of a complex situation, which let's get into separately. But a lot of the officials, let's say, take a short-term view. Of course, they want to be elected. They want to promote development and things of this nature, tax base, whatever. But if you look at the long view, it's better for the community to save buildings than tear them down. A case in point is Colonial Gardens, which just had its grand opening this past week. Colonial Gardens was originally threatened with demolition back in the early 2000s, 2008, thereabouts. And so it took 13 years to redevelop Colonial Gardens into the jewel that it is today. It took a lot of hard work, a lot of dollars involved with this. However, if you go out there at Colonial Gardens in the Kenwood Drive, Iroquois Park neighborhood right now and ask whether they would want a drugstore pharmacy or a fast food shop, which had been proposed back in the early 2000s, or would they rather have this beautiful Colonial Gardens building? Overwhelmingly, they will say they want that Colonial Gardens building and not another fast food or drugstore at that location. So we take the long view in preservation. We think it adds a lot of aesthetic quality and context to a city, and the reason why we do what we do.
And Colonial Gardens, I'm not familiar with that, having not lived here for that long. What is it?
It is out off of what's called New Cut Road. It's in the Iroquois Park neighborhood area. If you've not been out to Iroquois Park, it's you take Southern Parkway to where it intersects with Teller Boulevard. That turns into New Cut Road, but it's in the southern part of Louisville. And for anyone viewing this video, I highly recommend you going out there. There are now 4 beautiful restaurants out there. There's pizza, there's a breakfast place, there's a taco place, and then the most recent restaurant is more of a pub type food, hamburgers, fish, that sort of thing. So it's a great destination to go out and visit.
But it's a neighborhood or a building or?
Yeah, it's in the what's called the Kenwood Hill Drive neighborhood area. It's sort of like their neighborhood center, if you will. It's the Colonial Gardens used to be a nightclub back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Very famous location. It was also actually the first zoo in Louisville. They had lions and tigers and bears, literally. They had those out there in cages back in the 30s and 40s. And so, but then Colonial Gardens fell on hard times and closed in the early 2000s. Then a group came in, they wanted to tear it down, put up a drugstore or a fast food place. We said, well, that's not, and the neighbors got up in arms over that as well. They go, we don't need that here. We need restaurants is what we really want. So good quality restaurants is what this neighborhood needs. And that's what it ended up being.
Okay, well, I'm definitely going to have to check that out. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is.
And Louisville also has old Louisville has like one of the largest collections of brick Victorian houses in the country, or maybe the world. Is that a
Yeah,
success
yeah, they usually
story?
say that. And I always ask, well, tell me what survey that was that
Oh,
did
okay.
this. And you really can come up with a survey. It's the same. They say Louisville has more shotgun
Yeah.
houses than New Orleans. Well, who did that survey? How do you come up with that number? And yeah, I've always tried to track those items down. And I can never find what that's based on. Sort of folklore.
Okay. Are those two distinctions, whether or not they're totally accurate or not, are they the result of planning or just, you know, the way
Well,
things have fallen historically?
yeah, yeah. Old Louisville was where the elite of Louisville once lived. Louisville back in the late 1800s was a phenomenal industrial city. We had some phenomenal industrial plants, which were located around the Louisville and Nashville Railroad Depot there at 10th and Broadway. They all these industrial plants, which a lot of them are still there, lined the railroad tracks, and they made everything like all you name it, they made it back in those days. We had 40 paint companies one time here in Louisville. A lot of things were built here in Louisville, which obviously no longer are. So those industrial complex was there in South Louisville along the railroad tracks, and so then the elite, the people that owned those companies, lived in Old Louisville. They built these beautiful mansions, and they literally were able to take a horse carriage ride to their plant every day. It was within walking distance even to get there. Then when the automobile came in the early 1900s and 1920s, the elite of Louisville got their automobiles and they drove out of Old Louisville and moved to the suburbs, Glenview, other locations. And that sort of decimated Old Louisville. It went into decline. Those beautiful mansions were subdivided into all sorts of apartments and other things. And then it was reborn back in the 1970s and 1980s. A lot of people now have purchased these beautiful mansions and have restored them. But I'm rambling again here, but fortunately, none of that was demolished. The urban removal, as we called it, did not get the bulldozers that far south. I think the bulldozers got as far south as St. Catherine or thereabouts, in which they demolished a lot of the beautiful mansions in the area up near Broadway. But Old Louisville was spared.
So the
And
reason for, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the reason for that, the reason the bulldozers didn't go beyond a certain point was because of a renaissance among
correct.
people?
There was a
Okay.
Yeah, there was a major case back in the early 1970s. Two beautiful mansions there at 4th and Park. They're now called the Bacon House and the Bourbon Bed and Breakfast. I think they're now called that. But anyways, there's two beautiful mansions were proposed to be torn down for a parking lot. And the residents of Old Louisville really got up in arms and said, no, we can't do this. We can't demolish these two beautiful mansions for a parking lot. And by them saving those two mansions really spawned a renaissance, a revitalization of Old Louisville. And people started to move back into town and buying these and taking them from apartments back to single family home ownership. And so that started back in the 70s, 80s, obviously continues today.
Well, I live on South Shelby Street, just up from what they call the Swiss Hall.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that project?
In fact, I'll be there on Monday taking a tour of Swiss Hall. Yes.
Oh, just a private tour or is it a public tour?
A friend of mine who's working on the project is taking me through with it. If you need to go, let me know. I can possibly get you in. But yeah, they've just started the renovation of that. And that's in the St. Joseph's neighborhood, I think it's called, in that area. Shelby and Preston, just north of Eastern Parkway.
And do you know, I mean, maybe you don't know yet, but are they preserving, is there anything inside that they're preserving, like the ballroom or anything?
Yeah, I've never been inside it, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going through to see what's there. I know that they're going to be putting residential units within that, so my guess is they're not going to be saving those large spaces. They'll probably be making them into apartments or whatever residential units they're doing. And then they're building new homes around it, which is exciting.
I heard that there's supposed to be shotgun houses too, so.
That's correct. Yeah, there's things out on the internet which show the images of some of those very creatively designed.
So maybe we could switch to Liberty Hall.
Yeah, if you'd like to discuss Liberty Hall as how we got involved in this. So Liberty Hall, which some people also call Oddfellows, which I used to call Oddfellows. Most of us Louisvillians called it Oddfellows because the Oddfellows organization was there for like 60 years.
Right.
But actually, Liberty Hall is its official name. It's built in 1897, opened late 1897, November or December of 1897. And it was actually a multi-tenant building. There were 4 different tenants within that building, one being Oddfellows. There were several religious organizations into that building. And so they existed there for a long time. And the building, for the most part, has been used up until today. Within its 124-year existence, it's been occupied. Usually we as preservationists are fighting to save buildings that have been unoccupied for some time. They have structural problems, they're starting to fall down, they're in poor condition. And that's when we're called crazy preservationists trying to save something like that. But this building is just the opposite. It's in great condition, structurally sound, been occupied most of its existence, good quality building, nice design and everything. So it was a shock to us that it was supposed to be torn down. And this was part of a deal that Omni Hotel struck with the city back in 2014. Omni said that whenever they got ready to, quote, develop that site, which is along between 2nd and 3rd Street along Muhammad Ali, whenever Omni wanted to clear that site, the city was obligated to tear that down and pay for it. So taxpayer money would tear that building down. Whenever Omni said, hey, we're ready to develop the site, they put up something really nice. Obviously Omni is a great organization, puts up some great stuff, but they have not recently proposed anything. They proposed an entertainment venue in 2019, but recently over the last year and a half, they've not said anything about putting up a new building there. So, but they told the city, we want that site cleared now. We want to demo that building. So Omni can do that, or the city would do that, as long as they don't put up anything for 2 years. So either Omni can build something now and do it now, or if they don't build anything, they have to leave the site empty for 2 years, sort of a penalty for tearing down a building and not putting up a new structure. So that's sort of where we're at right now. And it's taxpayer money. That's one of the reasons I got involved is why are we as taxpayers obligated to demolish a good quality building to create an empty vacant lot for a multi-billion-dollar hotel company? To me, that's the definition of crazy. I know one of the council people called me crazy, but that's the definition of crazy. Paying over $400,000 of taxpayer money for a vacant lot. To me, I'm not sure about you, but to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense as an architect. So that's sort of a short version of where we're at today.
So with the agreements that are in place, is there any scenario where it could still be saved, the building?
I know that there are several groups looking at some, we do have a plan A, B, and C, just like I can't divulge a lot of our strategy here, but there are strategies of A, B, and C. We did file the lawsuit a week or so ago. That would have been on April the 22nd. Where is this? The 28th. It would have been on April the 22nd of 2021. We filed a lawsuit against the city to prevent them from tearing it down. And so that lawsuit will go through the courts. It's going to probably run a year and a half, that lawsuit, which will give us some time to work out possibly some alternative strategies of saving the building.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So
I haven't seen that in the news. Has that been reported on?
Well, the lawsuit it was in last Saturday's paper. That would have been
Okay.
April the 23rd, Saturday morning. They talked about us filing the lawsuit. And that's one other strategy we do. If unfortunately, we don't know all whenever a building's being demoed. Usually, a neighbor will call us and say, "Hey, they just put up a yellow sign that says this building's going to be demoed," and there's always a 30-day moratorium. So if you own a historic structure and you wanted to tear it down, you'd have to put up a notice, and there's a 30-day calendar day period in which the neighborhood or other folks can respond to that. And we'll usually get an email or a call and say, "Hey, they're looking at tearing this building down. We want it saved. What can you do?" And so we'll go through the process of examining it, what can be done, go through the landmarking process if we have to do it that way, or file a lawsuit. But it's a manner in which giving the neighborhood a say in what's going to go into that location. A lot of neighbors do not want drugstores. They don't want fast food. They want good quality construction. And this is the only mechanism that they have to really help impact that, what goes on to that location. And so we get involved in those sorts of things. And for what it's worth, I'm not a diehard preservationist. I will not stand in front of a bulldozer just because something's owed. My philosophy is replace a landmark with a landmark. If you're going to tear down a nice quality building, you'd better be replacing it of equal or better quality. I do not want to lessen the value of Louisville. We need to increase the value of Louisville, which I hope our officials want to do as well, which also increases the tax base of our community. If you put up a lesser structure that devalues the property value there, we're losing tax dollars. Let's keep good quality buildings. So that's my philosophy. Replace a landmark with a landmark, keep or improve the quality of Louisville.
And the organization you work with is called what? You may have already said that. But...
Yeah, I'm president of the Louisville Historical League. We were founded in 1972. We're going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary next year in 2022. And we are an organization of around 500 to 600 folks. And yeah, we've been around 50 years, which makes us historic. I think after 50 years, you're historic.
And have you saved any buildings that you'd like to point to, or?
Oh gosh, oh yeah, many buildings. I personally have been involved in, I think, 20 buildings that I've helped save. Most notably was Old Mill High School, which again, you're not familiar with since you're new to the city, but Old Mill High School was on Brook Street near Brook and Breckenridge is what it was called. It was a very historic high school. It moved out to a new campus out on Preston Highway back in I think the 1990s when Mel High moved out from its old campus. So the building was vacant, and Jefferson County Public Schools owned the building, and they had a dilemma. They had promised Central High School, which is on the west side of downtown, near what is that? Near is it around 11th and Chestnut, I think it is, somewhere like that. So they had promised Central High School that they needed a football stadium. And to get that football stadium, Jefferson County Public Schools said, "Hey, we're going to tear down Old Mill High School and put up a football stadium there." And so when I read about this, I said, "You're going to put up a football stadium for Central 2 miles away from their campus. Is that right? You're going to be busing students across town to go to athletic practice. Why can't you put it up next to Central High School? What's up with this?" And so I went out and talked to JCPS folks, and I said, "Well, Steve, we cannot find a site large enough for a football stadium next to Central High School." Well, I got one of these deep throat calls one night saying, "Hey, Steve, go look at such and such location. There's a warehouse there that I think if you could tear that warehouse down and make a great site for a football stadium." I said, "Okay." So I drive over, and this warehouse is right adjacent to Central High School. I said, "Yeah, if we tear that down, we can put a football stadium up there." So who owns that warehouse? Turns out it was the Courier Journal. Courier Journal had all their paper stored in that warehouse. Well, make a long story short, we worked out a deal where the Courier Journal tore down their paper warehouse, moved it adjacent to their building there at 6th and Broadway, which they are now selling. But anyways, they were able to expand at their at their headquarters location. We got the warehouse site, put the stadium there, and we saved Old Mill High School, which is now for the Salvation Army. Salvation Army owns that property now. It's great. It's for the less fortunate and homeless shelter in that location. So that was a $120 million deal. And that was 20 years ago. So it's probably around $150 million deal now. So that was a great economic win-win-win. Other buildings I helped save the historic Olmsted Park. Right after the Old Mill deal, I got into it with JCPS again, where they wanted to take Shelby Park, which is there at Oak and between Oak and Jackson and Shelby Streets in the historic Shelby Park neighborhood. You may be familiar with it there. They wanted to take that park and put a elementary school there. I'm like, oh, what? You're going to take an historic Olmsted Park and build a school there? No, we can't have that. So I got into it with JCPS again, and for what it's worth, we were able to find another site just to the south where they could put the school. So we saved Shelby Park. Those are two good examples, but yeah, you name it. I've been in the numerous historic preservation battles over the past 25, 30 years. Yeah.
Well, a lot of it sounds like is community connections and then negotiation abilities, negotiate with different parties.
Yeah, and I don't know if I have a certain vision for this, but a lot of people just cannot envision transforming historic property into a new functional purpose. A lot of folks just see they see old buildings, they see old plumbing, old wiring, old structure, whatever. And when I look at it, I say, my gosh, we can easily transform this in like at Colonial Gardens and make something wonderful out of this. And so that's what we bring to the table, is sort of like a visioning session, trying to convince folks that, hey, it's better to save than demolish.
What they call adaptive reuse, right?
There you go. That's another terminology. Or sustainable. It's a green process as well. That's the thing I keep telling the city. You're supposed to be sustainable. You're supposed to be green, and yet you're demoing a building for a vacant lot and adding to the landfill. Makes no sense. An existing building is more sustainable than any new construction, because new construction, you're bringing in materials from far away, whether it's steel or lumber or whatever components in the building. Whereas right now, all those components are right there. All your masonry is there. Your windows are there. Let's just save what's there. So it's a lot greener than demolition.
Do you have any particular vision for where the Liberty Hall is right now? This building itself and the space around it, what could happen there?
Yeah, we do. And again, I can't divulge what our strategy is, but we do have a vision for that. Yes, that is correct.
But it's under wraps at the moment.
Yeah, it is. There are discussions going on as we speak, and I don't want to work to those, put to that. And I'm not actually involved in those conversations. I do know, though, that other people are having conversations of that nature.
Now, I've been reading about this, and I contacted you, but I only recently actually drove by the building, and it's an impressive building. Yeah. I mean, it looks huge. I thought it would be smaller. I come from a town called Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where I helped restore an old Czech social hall that was a part, kind of like a fraternal. It was a fraternal association, with the Czechs coming over from Czechoslovakia to work at the slaughterhouse in Cedar Rapids. And I think it was a $2 million restoration of that building. Wow. And it housed an arts organization that's still there. They had a stage and, businesses on the first floor, like they did at the Oddfellows Hall here, probably.
That's correct.
That
yes.
was signature.
Yeah, the lodge was up on the upper floor, and then the lower levels were rented out to other groups. But yeah, no, Liberty Hall is phenomenal. One of the mysteries of Liberty Hall is finding out who designed it. Like you were referencing, It's a nice quality building. And typically we're able to find who the architect was for that building. So we have two, we've checked the Courier Journal archives, we've checked the Oddfellows archives, every type of archive we can imagine we've looked into trying to find out who the architect was for that building. Thus far, we're still 0 for 0. There are two possibilities. One is William Dodd, who is a famous architect, did a lot of nice buildings here in the early 1900s in Louisville. And he did a fellowship hall just a block to the south of Oddfellows, and has a lot of the similar ornamentation, a lot of the same detailing as the Liberty Hall structure. So I initially said could be a William Dodd building because they're very similar aesthetically. But then we've come across another architect by the name of Max Drach. His last name is spelled D-R-A-C-H, Max Drach or Drach. And he worked on several Oddfellows buildings here in the state. He did one in Owensboro, Kentucky, and he helped work on the African-American Oddfellows Hall at 12th and Walnut, which is now Muhammad Ali. He also did one at First and Jefferson, and he himself was an Oddfellow, and he was German. And the Liberty Hall was populated by German Oddfellows. So our now strong feeling is that it was designed by Max Drach. However, here's one reason why we think he may not be credited for that building. He left Louisville in 1897. He moved to Indianapolis. That was the same year Liberty Hall was under construction. So if Max Drach had designed it and was implementing it and then moved out of town, I can see where the Liberty Hall people say, well, no sense in talking about Max Drach anymore. He moved out of town. So that may be one reason why his name doesn't appear on any of the dedication or anything else associated with building of the building. But regardless, we're still looking. We had a researcher yesterday at the Filson Historical Society going through information there. Hopefully one day we'll find it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's kind of a mystery.
It is, yes. It's been befuddling. We've never been stumped on finding the architect before. And this one, all of my historic friends, they've taken this as a big challenge to find out who did this building.
Have you heard some of those stories about them finding human skeletons when they demolished Oddfellow halls across the country?
Wow, no, I have not heard that. And gosh, I hope they don't find any here.
The reason,
No.
I mean, the police got involved because when the people found it, like inside the walls of a building, they thought it was just evidence of a crime. But actually, the Oddfellows used the skeletons, both real and fake, in their ceremonies.
Wow. No, I had not come across that reference. Wow. Interesting.
Now, maybe this building is, well, it's pretty old. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
If they try to tear it down, I always say that it'll probably carry a curse with it. So hands off,
Well, karma is a bad thing. And I always tell people that when they do things for bad reasons, karma will come back and bite you. And I've told that to the council people. I said, you're doing this for a political reason, and it will come back to haunt you. So karma is a real thing in my estimation. Yes.
I would have to agree. Do you have any, this episode is going to be about Oddfellows in general, in a certain sense. Have you ever been a member of any fraternal associations other than architectural?
No, yeah, being an architect, that takes up my time 24/7. Well, I've been a member of the Louisville Historical League for 40 years. So that's somewhat of a fraternal or societal organization, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah, just and the Architects Association, I've been very involved with that group for the last 40 years as well. So that take up all my time. I never did get involved in Rotary or Kiwanis or those type groups. I give a lot of talks to those groups. I do a lot of history talks, and I've done numerous talks to those, and they always want me to join, but just don't have the time.
If you had the time, would you be interested? Do you ever have an urge to belong to something like that?
Well, unfortunately, my urge is nowadays, in the latter part of my years, is doing more research and writing more books. I got several more books I want to write. And so that's, hopefully I'll have more time for that. But no, as far as societal organizations, they're very valuable civically. I realize that, but for my intents, and I am a member of the Pilsen Historical Society. I do a lot of stuff with them as well. I do a lot of talks at senior citizen residential. I have 3 upcoming presentations to senior living facilities. So I do a lot of that. So that keeps me busy.
What are your books that are coming up that you're writing?
Well, my last book that I did this whole house series of books. I did distinctive houses, modern houses, historic houses, carriage houses, and haunted houses. I did 5 house books. The next one the last in the series is going to be called Landmark Houses of Louisville, which are really significant homes of Louisville. And it will have some of the homes from some of my previous books, but I'm going to be putting in a lot of newer buildings as well that I've come across, new houses that I've come across. So that's my next book, Landmark Houses of Louisville. I was going to put it out last year in 2020, but due to COVID, said, why write a book that you can't promote? So I hope to be able to write it this fall and get that out. Then I've been toying with the idea of doing a book called Lost Louisville, in which we highlight all the buildings that have been demolished and what has replaced them here in the city. The Chamber of Commerce back in 2000 or so, they put out a book called Then and Now, which was a similar type of book where they showed what used to be a location and what is there now. But they did all the good examples, showing where, like, the Humana building replaced a historic building. Well, that's a good example. Like I say, they replaced the landmark with a landmark. I want to highlight the ones where they used a lesser quality building for a landmark. We have more of those type of examples than the good quality replacing a historic building. So a Lost Louisville book is sort of what I'm also thinking of doing as well.
You also have a book called Louisville 2035, is that right?
Yeah, Louisville 2035. I wrote that back in, was it 2008? It was looking at Louisville 25 years into the future. And golly, I hope to live to see. But some of those things I talked about in my book actually did happen. And I'd have to pull out the book to talk about some of those. But yeah, I had put in like 10 suggestions for Louisville, what we should be doing. And some of those have actually happened or in the process of happening. So, but yeah.
Did it include intact historical districts in that 25 years?
Yes, I covered a full range from where to put the new bridge location to historic properties to new buildings. Yes, I looked into my crystal ball and said, hey, why aren't we doing this, this, and this? And so I'd have to pull out the book. It's been a while since I've actually looked at it. It's been a while, but that was, gosh, I wrote that book, 13 years ago now. Yikes. Time passes.
It's kind of science fiction writing in a way. Well, not science, but futurism.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I did that sort of a thing. And I've written other books called Louisville Tapestry, which contains a lot of history of the city.
Oh, okay.
Did what other? I'm looking over here to the side where I got all the books. I did a book on my church where I go to church, St. Francis of Rome, for our 125th anniversary. I did a book on them, which was pretty cool. My most recent book that I did was called Louisville Sights to See by Design, and that's SITES, Sights to See by Design, which I talk about all of the neat things to see in the Louisville region.
Well, great. I'm gonna have to check out some of those books. I bought a haunted house book. I'm not sure if I misplaced it when we moved here.
But yeah,
what's the name, the actual name of the haunted house book or this ghost story?
It's called Haunted Houses of Louisville.
That may be the one that I bought.
And that book came about because when I did my Historic Houses of Louisville book, when I interviewed the owners and talked about their house, they would also tell me their ghost stories.
Right.
They would say, oh, here's, we have a ghost, blah, blah, blah. And I felt like, gosh, I can't put that into my historic houses with Louisville. I would look like a quack, if you will, talking about ghosts in that sort of a book. So I ended up creating another book called Haunted Houses of Louisville, where I put those type ghost stories into a separate sort of a book. So that's how that came about.
What was your favorite ghost story?
Well, my favorite, and I've talked about this a lot, is near me. It's called The Lady in White. She inhabits the Peterson Dumino house in Crescent Hill. And I've lived in Crescent Hill for 40 years. And we would always speculate, why would a ghost live at the Peterson Dumino house? Normally a ghost is at a place where a tragic death or a tragedy occurred. That's where a ghost spirit usually resides. And so to our knowledge, there has never been a tragic death at the Peterson Dumino house. So why would a ghost be there? And there are numerous stories of people seeing the Lady in White. I've never seen her personally, but I've talked to a lot of people who have seen the ghost over at the Peterson Dumino house. So why was a ghost there? And I had to do some research, and I found some things out that we never knew existed over there. And that was very exciting to do that research and learn why there would have been a ghost at the Peterson Dumino house. If you want to find out, buy my book. And by the way, you can buy it off my website. It's wiserdesigns.com.
That book and several of the others, probably, right?
That is correct. All the ones, most of my books, unfortunately, are out of print. That's one thing I told my wife. I said, I always make sure these books are profitable. And thus, I never do a reprint. And once they sell out, and I move on to the next book. So I've done like 12 or 13 books, and only have like 4 or 5 that are still in print.
I mean, do you mind if I ask how many you print of each?
It all varies. I always tell people who are looking at writing books to do a business plan first, do a market study, figure out how many books you think you can realistically sell. A good selling book nowadays would be about 1,000 copies. And I've done, for instance, my Haunted Houses of Louisville book, I printed up 2,000 copies, and I've sold out most of those. So that was a great selling book. My worst selling book was Modern Houses of Louisville. I printed up 250 copies of Modern Houses of Louisville, and I've only sold about 150 copies of that. But I knew that it would be a tough sell. Louisville is not a modern house city. We are a traditional house city. We love our Italianate homes, our shotguns, our Richardsonian homes, the Cherokee triangles, the old Louisville, the Norton Common type house. We like traditional styles. So I knew going into doing that book, I said, I better not print up a whole lot of copies because I'm not sure how many I can sell. But traditionally, I would say 500 copies is reasonable. Then you have to do a price point. I do a lot of business planning before I go into writing a book and make sure that, I do my market research, that what I'm putting in the book, that people will be interested in. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people write books, and then they try to market them and find out that what they wrote, a lot of people aren't interested in. And so a lot of authors that I know have boxes of books in their basements because they didn't quite do their marketing plan first. Always do your marketing plan. And it's really changed over the years. When I first got into it back in the late 1990s, you had to use a publisher. I now do everything self-published. I do not use a publisher at all. So simple to do digital publishing now. I have a good friend here in town that prints up the books and all that. So I always recommend self-publishing.
Great. Congratulations on that. Yeah. The success in that realm too, in publishing. I wanted to ask you about from the ghost book or the haunted house book. I remember a ghost story about an apparition on a porch in old Louisville. Is that?
Well, that would probably be David Dominy. David Dominy is what I call the ghostologist of old Louisville. He's created a cottage industry there of a ghost in old Louisville. So I kind of stay out of Old Louisville, because that's what
Oh, okay.
David Dominy does. But yeah, he's got all sorts of stories of that nature. I tend to dwell on uh, ghosts that I can verify, if you will. I try to figure out why is if I hear of a house that has a haunting, I do the research. Who were the original owners? What tragedy might have happened there? Really get into the story and figure out why there is a ghost at a location. So mine's more historical based research on ghosts, trying to either dispel the ghost myth or substantiate it, like I did with the Peterson Dumino house.
Okay. And in your book about Louisville, like narrative history, are there old stories about Louisville's past in that?
Oh yeah, yeah. I talk about when Abraham Lincoln came to the city. I talk about some of the people that made Louisville great within it. I talk about the Belknap family. Nowadays, we in Louisville only know of the Belknap family because of the University of Louisville Belknap campus. Well, who were the Belknaps? So I talk about them and their great hardware company that was once here. And I talk about a famous tragedy that happened to the Belknaps during World War II that very few people are aware of. Oh, very sad tale of what happened to the Belknap family back in World War II. And that was something that I just love. When people tell me a certain story, they say, hey, I've heard about such and such. It will register into me. I said, well, what's actually behind that? What actually happened there? So I'm able to do the research, get back into the newspaper archives, look at the burial records, really dig down and find out what happened. And those are the type of things that really get me fired up and interested in a topic.
Have you heard a story about Amelia Earhart and that
Well,
airfield bar, the Devil's Inn?
and Air Devil's Tavern out there on
Yeah,
Taylorsville Road. I don't know much about that. I'm not so much into aviation. Amelia Earhart, I guess she visited the city. I know that Lindbergh came through Louisville, and I guess I've not heard too much about Amelia Earhart coming through Louisville. Is there a story there or that you're aware of? Or
that she had a few beers there or something. It's not a
well,
great story or anything. It's just,
for what
like
it's worth,
she
I hear a
drank
lot
it.
of similar sorts of stories that so and so did this or that. And again, I'm a researcher and archivist, and I'll look into a story and I'm like, yeah, that didn't quite happen. I can't find that. Like I say, early on, we were talking about number of shotgun houses or Victorian or whatever.
Yeah,
I go, well, point me to the survey. Who did that study that said we had the most shotgun houses in Louisville? And no one can point me to the study. I do believe it, though. We have a lot of shotguns here, but who has actually gone out and counted those up?
right. Well, is there anything else that we haven't touched on? I mean, I'm sure there is, but that you want to touch on?
No, I just hope that we can get through this period that we're in right now where Louisville is being challenged, I guess you could say. Downtown is taking a downturn. That's one reason I wanted to save the Liberty Hall. Why are we, again, decreasing the value of downtown when we need as much positivity in downtown? I've always been a downtown Louisville person. And so I hope we can get past this phase where people are, don't use, or the security in downtown. I hope we can get to where, in 2019, Louisville was going gangbusters. Golly, we had everything going for it with residential moving downtown and all that. And then this past year and a half, it's been very painful to see it decline the way it has. And I'm hoping that we can get over this situation, get everything somewhat back to normal. And Louisville's a great city. And I always say we want to make Louisville a better place in which to live and visit. And that's my purpose in doing what I do. So I'll continue on that for however long I have left on this planet.
Well, I'm very impressed with the work and the success that you've had in the community. And I just want to thank you for your efforts.
Yeah, it's not one that I always look back on my laurels. It's always what's the next challenge. I've never had at a phase of my life where I can just sit back and just, say, oh, wow, we did all this great stuff and now it's time to stop. And unfortunately, I know people like that. They'll do a good project or two, and next thing you know, they've dropped off and you don't hear from them anymore. And I hope I'm not like that. I just want to continue to be involved and making a difference, if you will. And I do have one other project that I'm hoping to make a difference with. It's Louisville Gardens. It's the old armory in downtown at 6th and Muhammad Ali. And it's a vacant building. It's a huge building. Not sure if you're familiar with it or not, but I would love to see that transformed into affordable housing. I think it would be a phenomenal way of going about doing it. And I have a concept of how that can be done. And hopefully I'll be writing about that in an article here shortly. But
Okay,
Louisville
great.
Gardens is on my radar.
Excellent.
So
Also wanted to ask you, probably not just for the recorded part of this, but I don't know the name of the street, but the one where the art hotel is on and the art galleries downtown.
West Main Street.
Yeah. I saw that they're like preserving the facade, but like destroying everything behind the facade. Was I correct in?
Well, now, are you talking about the Whiskey Row area?
Yeah.
There's an area called Whiskey Row between 1st and the 2nd Street on West Main Street. It's the 100 block of West Main. And yeah, there was a facade there, which unfortunately they had to take down one of the buildings there to the structural situation. So we were able to save the facade, but the building itself had deteriorated too much.
Oh, okay. So that was just a one case thing.
That is correct. I'm not a facade saving person. I know that we have saved a lot of facades in this community. In fact, they proposed saving the facade of Liberty Hall. I said, no, that's not historic preservation. That is not, you might as well just tear it down and recreate the facade. They did that over on Baxter and Broadway. There's a big residential complex there where they saved several facades, and it's not worth it. It's not worth saving facades. I'm not into that aspect. But there they were able to save it because it was part of a continuous facade between 1st and 2nd Street, and they built a new construction right up against it. It turned out fairly well, as best can be had. But for the most part, I'm not into saving facades. I want to save the building.
And then Churchill Downs, I haven't been on this property. Is there a lot of historic structures on that property? It didn't look like
not a whole lot left. Yeah,
that's what I was wondering. There's not.
What's that?
There's not much.
No.
Okay.
No, it's been turned into a casino, if you ask me. It looks
that's what it looks like.
Looks like it belongs more in Las Vegas than it does in Louisville. And
Sad.
The twin spires are about all that's left. It's really unfortunate how they could have done it a lot more sensitively, if you ask me. But yeah, but no, not much historic left there. You're right. So.
And then you said you were a member of it. I'm jumping around here at the end. A church, a Catholic church?
Yeah, St. Francis of Rome in the Clifton neighborhood.
So you are in sort of it's not fraternal, but it's a community of people that you belong to. And a lot of those fraternal, I don't know if fraternal just indicates male only. I don't know if that word does or not. But a lot of those, they had offshoots or, sister organizations, like Rebecca Lodge was the sister organization of the Odd Fellows.
Correct.
But those were created to like kind of not really replace the community of church for people, but the Catholic Church sort of treated it that way when they sort of demonized the Odd Fellows. And I mean, from the outside, that looks pretty weird even today, what they were doing in there. So it's not weird that the Catholic Church would say, oh, it's like they're trying to take over the world. It's a conspiracy theory and all that. It's understandable why people would think that, because they were dressed up in all these robes. They had like skeletons and all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah, you have other groups like the Masons and
the Masons, yeah. And the Shriners seem to have a lot of activity here in town. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. In fact, the Shrine Circus is coming up here shortly. I hope to take my grandson to. But yeah, the Shriners are still very much involved. And if we had had a parade today, we're filming this on a Thursday of Derby week, we would have had a lot of Shriners in the parade today.
Riding around in their little cars and,
Little go-karts and other
yeah.
things, yes. But
Well,
no,
on
I
that
never
note-
got involved in the Shriner group either.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate you sitting down to talk to me, and I'll send you this file.
Okay, sounds great.
I don't know if it'll email very well. I might have to slice it up or something.
Well, do you know, in fact, I'll see, have you ever used wetransfer.com?
No?
It's wetransfer.com. Very simple to use. Just go in wetransfer.com. You can set, it's a free account, and you can transfer high gigabyte documents with, usually you have to use Dropbox or something like that to transfer files. But WeTransfer will send a link out to a person, and you can click on that link and access it and download it into your computer. Very simple. So try out wetransfer.com.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, it's very simple to do, and I highly recommend. I use that a lot in my book publishing manner, because we have to transmit a lot of high resolution photographs and things of that nature, much more than 20 megabytes. Usually you're transferring 50, 100, 200 megabyte files. And you can try Dropbox, but WeTransfer, I feel, is much faster and easier.
Okay, well, that's a good tip. Thank you.
Okay, well, Todd, really enjoyed it. And we'll see if I can get you in the Swiss Hall. How's that?
Yeah, let me know.
Okay, you have a good day. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.